Welcome to another episode of the CattleUSA Daily Podcast. Today we are welcoming back John Campbell onto the podcast to talk about the markets and what we're seeing on the auction blocks across the United States, not only in Lahana, where John is located with their auction market, but also just the markets in general. What are we seeing with the cattle market across the Midwest, across the world? We talk all of those things. We talk going into fall. What are we kind of anticipating? What are we going to be seeing as we go into that? We talk about the volatility of the cattle market and some other things that we have been seeing over the past few weeks and what we can anticipate going forward. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this episode with John. But before we do that, if you guys could take 1 second to like, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, we would really appreciate it here at the team. It only takes a few seconds to go and do those things, and it helps us continue to grow, reach more people, and make a broader impact within the cattle industry. Without further ado, let's hop into this episode with John. John, welcome back to the podcast. We are so excited to have you back once again after a 1-week hiatus. How is life in La Junta? How did the auction go this week? Update us. What's going on in the world?
Pretty good. The lightweight calf market, and again, we're light on receipts here. Our business is seasonal. We're cow-calf guys, and we'll get a few yearlings here at the end of the month, but all in all, this week, you saw still pretty good optimism. The lightweight calf guys are still in there because they know they've got to buy them as they come. They're just not a lot with the genetics and the feed, and there's not a lot of lightweight calves available. So excellent demand for them because this wheat is sprouting just as fast as they're planting it. And everybody's starting to pile up feed and worried about next year's grass cattle. And so for the available supply on the light calves, the way they roughed the market up Tuesday really didn't affect the little light guys. We saw 3-weight steer calves up to $515 to as much as $575 weighing 3, which Lauren would be no cheaper. 4-weight steer calves here in Atlanta, $465 to $517. It seemed like $450 was kind of the break on the weight. Then you get out for this time of year, then those calves start getting a little too big for the guys that want to ultimately run them on wheat or winter them and then summer them. So you got up into the 5-weight calves here, $380 to $460. Little heifer calves kind of followed suit. They were still stout. The little 3-weights, $430 to $485. Few up to $515, 4-weight heifers. I thought just weighing four and a little, we could still get north of $4 by quite a little, up to $415 weighing on top of 4. But the 5-weight calves, then you kind of saw the effects of the limit down move, and $350 to $380, and Lauren, that would have been substantially lower, maybe $15-20 lower, but mostly packages and small lots of calves. So that makes it even more significant, I guess, in the price. If we had some load lots of calves, I don't think it would have been quite that rough. Just packages of stockers and feeders, but that's where they really took dead aim at them. 10 to 15 lower, I thought, if I'm being honest. 340 to 362 on the heifers, on like a 540, 50, what I consider a stocker handy weight heifer, up to a 6-weight, and then not any 7-weights on the market to speak of, but kind of 320 to 327 on the big 850 to 950 weight heifers, which maybe just $4 or $5 cheaper, thinking that they'll come fat sooner and everybody a little more confidence on the short term on the fed cattle deal. It was the cattle that you're taking on out and going to make feeders and fats at later that kind of took the blunt of it. We had some big 1,000-pound, 10 1/4 weight heifers at $292 that really wouldn't have been any cheaper. On the steer side of things, same deal, 5 to 13 lower. Once they got weighing on top of 5, why, I called the 5.5 to 6.5 weight cattle, kind of 390 up to 410. We're still selling some 6-weight cattle north of $4, 40, 5, 6, 7, 410. Best we did on the 7 weights, but again, just smaller lots of them, 378, and kind of 335 to 351 on the 8-weight cattle here in La Junta, which, like I said, would be a big 10, 12, 15 lower. So anyway, we've been through that before, and so we just live with it and go on.
Absolutely. What about other sale barns in the region or just across the states or anything like that? What are kind of some things that have stuck out to you this week? Any highs, lows? What are your thoughts just on the market in general?
Well, the cow and the pair deal is kind of the stick out. I think everybody, even it'll be interesting to see what happens today, but it's got a lower tone to it everywhere. But the nice thing about waking up Wednesday, they had expanded the limits, and so everybody was sitting on pins and needles watching the commodity market, and they ended up closing them higher, and really didn't take them down hard at all. Some of the back months of the feeders down 100 points, which is nothing this day and age. So everybody kind of breathed a sigh of relief and thought, well, I guess there is going to be a tomorrow. And I thought yesterday in Dodge, and the same old true today in Pratt and Salina, everybody's gathered back up and thinking, well, okay, all right, it's a little cheaper, but it's not the end of the world. But they selling some pairs still, that's the highlight. 4,050 up to, we had some young pairs here bring 4,700. Dodge City yesterday had a dispersal, had some pairs bring 45 and a half. I thought their young springers there in Dodge yesterday sold extremely well. Some spring calving cows, and these would have been 4 and 5-year-old cows, not necessarily 3-year-old cows, finally bringing $4,000, which I think we will see more and more common as they get closer to calving. As we get through the fall, harvest is done, calves are sold, the money's counted, and people realize they got a tax problem. Why, we'll see more of that $4,000 mark on for sure on these young cows. It's pretty encouraging, I guess, at the end of the day, to see that happening here in September. The solid mouth spring calving cows, 28 and a half up to, they sold a lot of, and they were a set of dispersal cows, but just cows, and I'm not putting them down, but solid mouth cows bringing north of 3,000, which is a pretty good benchmark for a solid mouth cow. And what you'll see, some of the bankers and some of the boys will say, well, I don't know if I want to give 4,200 for a young cow, which she's the better value, but they start looking at their bank account and say, well, what about a solid mouth cow at 32, 3, 4, 500? Well, she's next year's old cow, but you'll still run her for a few years and you can save maybe 5, 6, $700 buying that solid mouth cow. And they think, well, I'll get her out another 2, 3 years, then maybe these younger cows will get cheaper and da 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 da. So you'll probably see the solid mouth cows in some places sell really, really well. The old cow deal, kind of 25 to 20, 800, which again for September, I just think is great. Normally we see the top in the stock cow market in November and December for all of the reasons that I mentioned. The farmers are caught up, the feed's in the bin, the calves have been sold, so we know how much money we got. Plus, we've pregnancy tested our cows. We know how many holes we need to fill. There's just a lot of questions that are answered in November and December that can't be answered quite yet, but luckily there's not a lot of cows moving yet, and I don't think there will be a lot of them. But that stock cow market really develops in November and December, and we're at a shortage of cows and an overabundance of rough feed, so that's only suitable for cows. So again, it will pay to sell your older cows as pregnant cows this fall. So something to think about.
Yeah, 100%. As we look out in the next few weeks, we're getting ready to start fall. Some people say we're already in fall. I subscribe to the fall doesn't start until September 22nd. That's personally me. So I say we're still a few weeks away from fall. Some people are saying fall is here. I'm saying, no, you're crazy. But
you are right.
Weeks away.
That's right.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate
I know that because you haven't broke your felt hat out yet. Or your fur-lined gloves, your handy Andes, the yellow ones, right?
Yes, it's still hot outside. It's
Okay, so
not
what'd
fall,
you say,
guys.
September 22nd? You
22nd, I
are
think, is
correct.
when it is.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
That's when I subscribe to it.
That's right.
So
There you
we're a
go.
few weeks away from it, John. What are your thoughts as we get ready and get prepped for fall?
Well, I'm starting to field a lot of calls daily, wanting to know if the calves have started. Have the calves started? Have these guys are chomping at the bit on these calves? They're coming off huge profits, and we're just rehashing the same thing. Lots of feed. There's going to be wheat pasture, I think, but that's always promises a lot and sometimes doesn't deliver. But I am surprised at the calls that I'm fielding on a daily basis, guys wanting calves. Historically, here in Lahana, and we're a big supplier of calves, it's the middle of October really before we see any calves. And we might see a few of these western slope calves, Lauren, come early because they are just so dry west of here, and some of the even in the San Luis Valley where they had a dry year, didn't put up much feed. There's no place to go with those calves once they come off the mountain. The majority of those cattle some are on some BLM country or high country that probably was better than the low country, but still they're kind of running out of feed there. And so those guys, I know some people that have already gathered their cattle off the mountains and have weaned them and stuck them in some commercial yards somewhere. There's several yards over Montrose, Delta, Olathe, over in there. Those guys will background some calves sometime, but with the market as good as it is, excuse me, you will see some of those calves just come straight to town, and the market is going to bring them in, but it's still really, really seasonal. I mean, don't look for any big run in Lahana really for another month. And I look for the light calves just to, they seem high now. I mean, you're selling 550, 575 little 3-weight calves. Typically, they just get higher. As we go along, the calves are growing, the calves get bigger. Granted, there's a bigger supply of them out there, but these little light calves are hard to find, and the guys that buy those buy them all the time, and I think they'll just get noticeably higher as we get into the runs and the quality and the numbers start to increase. There's shorter numbers of them than normal, and excellent prospects for wheat pasture. And when those two things come together, why, look out, because those wheat guys will pin their ears back. And, it's just, they just stick it up and leave it up. And when the dust settles, they wonder if they got them or not. So you'll have to fight those boys off. I think the big calves, Lauren, I think they'll work higher too, just as they become more available. As I've mentioned before, profit is an excellent motivator. And everybody made buckets full of money last year. Plus, you've got feed, some much cheaper this year and a shorter supply. Once harvest is over, I always think November traditionally is better than October. A lot of people, your cow calf guys, need to sell in October just because of timing. That's when they need to do something. So that's why we see such big seasonal pushes at the end of October. But for the stockman out there, if you can wait till November, I think you're usually rewarded about 8 years out of 10 if you can hold out into November. But where we're so close to higher elevation, those guys all run the risk of a late storm, or something like that. And boy, it'll jerk 30, 40 pounds off them calves in just a matter of no time, which is also one of the reasons the buyers like to buy them in November. I mean, the conditions better, but usually, we deal with a little cooler temps. But first and foremost, everybody's ready for one in November. Whereas in October, we've still got Milo out. We've still got the last cut in the hay to put up. The silage is in, but we haven't picked all the corn yet. And those farmers they're farmers, and they'll take care of all of that before they start worrying about cattle. And so it's usually November when that happens. A lot of the seasoned pros that buy them all the time, like I said, they like the condition on the calves better in November. You've usually had a frost that kills the flies, kills the bugs. We've usually had some moisture of some kind, so that gets the dust problem down that you deal with in October. If you're going to have wheat pasture, it'll be made by November if you're going to have it, whereas October sometimes a little too early. Like I said, the calves have had a little snow on their back. So for the most part, and your temperatures moderate out too. In October, Lauren, we could still have some 90-degree days. It's supposed to be 96 here today, but in October, you'll see those huge temperature swings. And the old gray-haired guys, they say, I'm not going to buy when it's 90 in the day and 30 at night, especially for what these things cost. And just because they cost more, that don't mean they survive any better. So they want to stay away from those big temperature swings. And all those things are good and great, but they're also battling with the battle of, oh, God dang, that market's going to go up, and everybody knows we don't have any cattle. I don't know. Maybe we better get started buying a few, So, but excellent demand, I think we'll see. And I'm optimistic right on through the fall. I think we get higher as we go, barring any, black swan event to happen.
Your cowboy boots tell your story before you ever speak. Every scuff, every crease is a memory. At Chizo's, we make each pair like it's the only one that matters. Because to the man who wears them, it is. Cowboy boots made to be worn for years and worth passing down. Find yours at Chizos.com. That's CHISOS.com. Chizos. Do right. Love Texas.
Yeah, we do not want any black swan events. We've had enough for the year, I think, that we can just call it good and say that we've hit our max for the year. Let's just coast until Christmas and New Year's and say that 2025 was a year to remember.
Yeah.
And leave it at that. Leave it at that.
Wait, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, we can dream. Are there any other key takeaways from the market that we need to hit on this week, John? Any other things that we need to be leaving with the audience members this week?
Just kind of a reflection of what we talked about last week. We talked about, boy, when we get to such high levels, we are at the mercy of any little thing that comes along. And Tuesday was a prime example of that. And bless his heart, Trump came out, somebody asked him about high-priced beef, and he said, once my policies are all in place, and he's talking about Canada, he's talking about Mexico, he's talking about Brazil, we'll bring the price of that beef down. Well, you got to remember, it's just the farmers, the feedlots guys, and the cowboys that are short. The millionaires are short, the billionaires are long. The billionaires are the ones, the commercial paper guys, the packers are the ones driving this deal up, and they're the long position. Well, they are also the entity that is the most influenced by any kind of bad news because they're not in the business. They're not covering their ass. They're like the cowboys are. So when the commercial paper and the packers, when they get a little shook up, they dump them. And when they do, why, then we suffer the blunt of the storm. So be on the lookout, because those commercial paper guys, they don't have the cattle like the cowboys do to back up their position. And I'm making a real general statement here. That doesn't mean some of the feedlot guys don't spec or some of the cowboys don't spec. But be conscientious about, if they drop the, tariffs on Brazil, okay, that's going to be a market shaker. Incidentally, Brazil has just passed the U.S. in beef production. And a lot of people don't know they are the biggest producer of beef now. U.S. is now number 2. We've got a great big tariff on Brazil, but the Mexicans don't. So you can put 2 and 2 together. So now Mexico is a big player on the Brazilian beef. And the Brazilians will sell it to Mexico, and then somehow it'll find its way to the U.S. Imagine that. But that's what's going to happen. Again, we have a screw worm either way. If the U.S. dumps enough money into Mexico to fight a Mexican problem, why, they'll have the screw worm deal cleaned up, and everybody that's screaming about the Mexicans, why, then they'll let them in. So that in itself is not enough numbers to have an impact. But remember, we're not sending the message to the millionaires. We're sending it to the billionaires. And the billionaires panic when something like that happens. They've been along for the ride and making all the profit, and they're going to say, I've made all the money I need, boys, get me out. And so if they open up the border because of the screwworm deal, that's going to affect it. Or if we get the worst case scenario and you get a screwworm in the U.S., that's going to tank the markets. Anyway, we have to be real conscientious, and I still think it's a time to buy some insurance or short the board. The insurance is a good program if you're not banked quite enough to handle the Chicago boys. Look at this. You know, all of those things can affect it. And we know we're at way historical levels. So spend 70, 80 bucks a head and cover your ass on these calves and on these stockers. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I hope it keeps going up, but you have to remember the powers at B in why we're at the level. So the Cowboys are still in control, Lauren, in terms of fundamentals. You know, yes, it is fundamentally sound. Our business is way sound. And we're helped by these tariffs that are keeping all these outside cattle at bay. But that deal, the billionaires will make sure that changes. And when it does, you'll be happy you've kind of got your rear end covered. I don't know when it'll happen or how it'll happen, but I do think it'll probably happen.
I was talking to the other guy we have on the podcast, Dan, about the commodities market earlier this morning.
That guy does a good job. I like him.
Yes, yes. And we were talking about the fact that, like, we are selling calves right now, or yearlings, for what we were selling fats for last year. And we couldn't have predicted that anytime. Like, if you had put that in front of me, I would have said, yeah, when pigs fly. Like, that's what I would have said to that a year ago. But we're here. And the market has been so volatile over the past 6 months that none of us could have predicted anything that's happening right now. And so it's one of those situations that it's like, we also can't predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months. So protect yourself while it's high. Protect yourself while you still can. So that way you're not the one licking your wounds in 6 months when the market corrects. And we're not seeing the numbers that we're seeing right now.
And I think most people have, Lauren. Know, and it's good on one hand because that will keep you in the game. You know, you'll still be able to play the next time. Yeah, I only made 100, and I give Chicago 700, or I give the insurance boys 80. But you can still play if you've protected your profit and. You hate missing out on this big play, but with the dollars involved, it will allow you to play again, and that's important. But I think I don't know what the percentage is, but the biggest percentage of people have put on some kind of protection along here. Way back there. 270, 80. Not and everybody at 3, well, how do I sign up for this LRP, or what's the deal? And only the real dyed-in-the-wool toughs that never do anything, and I'm not saying they're wrong, they're right this year. That's probably the only part of the population, and probably not a big one, that hasn't kind of put some protection on, I think.
100%. Well, any other thoughts as we close out the podcast today, John?
Well, I have here's my folder, and if you're going on for the antitrust deal for JBS, this represents mine, which is not very big. It's not, but you need to kind of buckle down, and you'll have to have all your closeouts. It asks for a lot of information, but it's not super hard. I got all mine entered and then got ready to send it. And because I was on Firefox or something, it had a firewall set up and wouldn't let me send it. And I lost the whole damn thing. So I had to start over. And luckily my wife would key entry. She's a Sharpie, as I was reading to her, and we got into, I think, Google Chrome. And so you can go that way, but it, and I'll do the math for you because it finally submitted it. But JBS is so smart. They're settling for 83.5 million. And I'm not an attorney, nor did I have my attorney look at this, but it's saying by filing this claim, you're opting out of any further actions against JBS. The very best scenario that I think that I could make on 50 some hundred cattle would be maybe $1 a head. By the time the suits and ties take their cut, and then you divide $83.5 million, Lauren, they made that last night while you and I were snoring. Well, you're probably not snoring, but I ain't. It's nothing. They are so smart. Well, yeah, we'll give you $83.5 million. They've done it countless times. Whoever negotiated that deal, I mean, that was a huge mistake. JBS, but that's maybe the only deal you got. But they have done it, and they have done it, and they have done it. But what by filling out all this information, I did it just for principle and for spite. But what I'm saying is, oh yeah, hell, I'm glad you made that ruling, $83.5 million, because at the end of the day, boy, I really got screwed out of about 82 cents a head or $1. Who the hell makes, you know what I'm saying? That's what it's probably going to boil down to. You're going to get nothing. And you're telling me we went through all of this and all this antitrust, and it'll be years before they settle it because JBS, we've decided they got you for $1. That'll be the payback to the producers. So, they need to forget all that and the settlement deal, and let's go back to the problem at hand. What really is the situation out there? With the Sherman antitrust laws, the monopolistic behavior. When's somebody gonna identify the elephant in the room and say that's the real problem? Well, we don't know that that's a problem or not, but here's $83.5 million. Oh, okay. Well, boys, we got him for $83 million. Yeah, you cowboys line up and get your check for $1 a head. Wow, that'll bring them to their knees. So.
John's going to be a rich man here in a couple years, I tell you what, when this settlement comes through.
Yeah, right.
That's a stack of paperwork.
If I'm the only one that applied.
Hey, they made it so difficult that maybe you will be the only one that applied. And you'll
yeah, it's difficult for those that are challenged, like I am. But it's really not all that hard if you've got some records. And they've even got a deal that says, hell, I don't know. They got to me somehow, but I don't have all the records. There's another option in there where you can, let one of the high-paid lawyers kind of take you under his wing and do the deal. But again, I thought they were pretty smart by, okay, you can file that and get your share of the $83 million, but that's the only money you're going to get. I think the way I understand it, because you're opting out of a lot of it. And Lauren, and not to tie up a lot of time, but you and I touched on it off the air. Man, oh man, we lost a great one in Charlie Kirk. Son of a gun, young, Christian, conservative. And the thing I really appreciated about him is you've got rock throwers like me that sat here and tell you, that guy had an open forum everywhere he went to. And he would look people in the eye and say, I'll take all comers, all challenges, and really did it right. But I was so shocked when you'd hear some of these talk show people and they would say, I can't believe how we got to where we're at. Well, cripes sakes almighty, what you talking about? It's easy to find out. Just look back of the cliff that we've jumped off over the last several years. Society has really, really lost its way. And we have no value, no ethics, no morality. And, people are just growing up. Nobody's raising kids anymore. There's not two parents anymore. And I know things happen, but, this radical decline in people's faith and results of that is we have no established code anymore of behavior to live by. There is none. And it started in my generation, the decline, and no consequences for failure or to perform at any level. and we're all to blame because we didn't stand up and take the hard positions, and now it's snowballing that way, and you lose a guy like that, and the young guys coming on and say, boy, I don't know if I want to go out there and beat the drum too hard. I don't want to get shot. Well, we created this huge population that have been denied all of the things that we talk about, and we've let them be denied. So that's the contention that's out there now for any kind, in my opinion, any kind of rational thought.
Yeah, no, we were talking about it off air. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It's one of those situations that you hear it and the world just feels like it kind of pauses for a second. And you're like, okay, how are we supposed to move forward from this? What are we supposed to do? Like, what is the next step from this? And I think we're all kind of at the standstill right now, just trying to figure out what's next. But like you said, we lost someone who wasn't afraid to talk to anyone and talk to them like a human and say, hey, here's your question. Here's my rebuttal. Let's debate it. Let's talk about it. And like, I will hear any question and all questions and let's talk about it. And he was such a outspoken Christian as well, and stood up for the gospel in so many aspects, in so many ways, and tied it into politics in such a beautiful way that I don't know how you look at that and say, let's move forward from this, because it's so sad that we live in a world where if you don't like someone, or if someone doesn't share the same views as you, that's the way that you go. That's the path that you take. We go within 48 hours, we have a woman murdered on a train rail because she's white, and a person assassinated because of his beliefs and his outspokenness. And it's just a really sad place that we've come to.
Yeah. No. And, us old guys, why we kind of think, well, we got our guy in there, you know what I mean? He's fighting the battle for us, and maybe not right on everything, but grounded in so many of the ethics and things that people of my generation believe in. He's our guy. But we found so much confidence. Here you've got a young guy, 31 years old, and we've got a vice president still that is of that same discipline. And we said, man, I can see the light now. We've got some strong advocates out there for rights right, wrongs wrong, faith-based communication. And boy, it was so comforting for people, I think, my generation, to think, there's still some good young guys out there. And by golly, don't lose all hope in, all the crap that we're exposed to. There's still some people out there. But boy, he was such an icon and such a saint. It just breaks your heart to know how in the world, name me the number 2 guy that comes up behind him and has that big impact. So it's going to take a while to digest all that.
It absolutely will. It absolutely will. Well, John, thank you for your time today, for coming on, sharing your thoughts on the market, and just a candid discussion that you and I are able to have as well. I appreciate it. To all of our listeners out there, we appreciate you guys coming in and listening to us chat every single week. Thank you for being here. And we will see you all tomorrow on another episode. Have a good one, y'all.